Steelers Nation. The conversation around this team has shifted in a way that feels impossible to ignore for years. The Pittsburgh Steelers have existed in a space that many franchises would envy. Competitive enough to matter every single season, stable enough to avoid total collapse, and proud enough to never flirt with the idea of tearing everything down. But stability can become uncomfortable when it starts to feel like stagnation. And that is exactly where this franchise finds itself right now, standing at a crossroads between what it has always been and what it may need to become. There is a popular idea in sports culture that rebuilding is easy to accept. As long as it promises a brighter future, fans often say they are willing to endure losing seasons, painful Sundays, and uncomfortable conversations if it means eventually landing the right quarterback or returning to championship relevance. In theory, that sounds noble and rational. In practice, especially in a city like Pittsburgh, it has never truly worked that way. This organization, much like the fan base that supports it, is not wired to throw seasons away or treat losses as acceptable collateral damage. If you look at how other teams in this city have navigated similar situations, the comparison becomes revealing. Aging stars still producing at a high level, younger players trying to establish themselves, and a front office attempting to balance respect for the past with preparation for the future. In those cases, there was never a full collapse, never a true bottoming out. The Steelers mirror that pattern almost perfectly, even when things have not gone according to plan. The team has remained competitive enough to convince itself that it is closer than it might actually be. That mindset has been reinforced for nearly 2 decades by one defining principle: win the next game, no matter the roster limitations, no matter the long-term questions. The priority has always been Sunday. That approach brought consistency, respect, and plenty of winning seasons, but it also created blind spots. One of those blind spots sits at the most important position in all of professional sports: the quarterback. You can build a strong defense, you can draft well, you can coach your way into relevance. But without clarity at quarterback, everything else feels temporary. The current roster tells an interesting story. On one side, there are established leaders, veterans who still set the tone and carry the identity of the franchise. On the other, there are young players with real potential, guys you can envision being part of the next great Steelers core. What is missing is that clear bridge between eras, the sense that there is a defined direction rather than a collection of individual pieces. It creates a gap that becomes impossible to ignore when games tighten and seasons slip away. Quarterback development, more than any other position, demands patience and real opportunity. You do not learn what a young quarterback is by watching him in practice alone, and you rarely learn it in preseason appearances that barely resemble real football. The only honest evaluation comes when the lights are on, the games count, and mistakes actually matter. That process is uncomfortable. It requires accepting losses, enduring criticism, and resisting the urge to grab the nearest short-term solution. And that is where the Steelers have consistently struggled in recent years. Instead of fully committing to finding out what they have in younger options, the organization has repeatedly turned to stopgap answers, veterans brought in to stabilize things, to keep the floor high enough to remain competitive, but never to truly raise the ceiling. Each move made sense in isolation, but together they formed a pattern of avoidance, a reluctance to endure the pain that often comes before real clarity. The truth is, Pittsburgh is not a city that tolerates losing well, watching games, gathering with family and friends, living and dying with every drive. That is part of the culture. Close losses feel worse than blowouts because they tease hope. They convince you that the team is one adjustment away, one bounce away, one decision away from being something more. That illusion can be powerful, but it can also delay necessary change as new leadership begins to take shape and the next phase of this franchise slowly reveals itself. There is an uncomfortable question hovering over everything. Is the priority still simply to win the next game? Or is it finally time to think beyond the immediate horizon? Football is different from other sports. It revolves around one position more than any other. And until the Steelers find a quarterback they can trust for years rather than months, every season will feel like a temporary solution wrapped in familiar colors. This does not mean abandoning competitiveness or disrespecting the foundation that has made this franchise what it is. It means acknowledging reality. It means understanding that clarity sometimes requires sacrifice, and that progress is rarely linear. The Steelers have avoided rock bottom for decades, but avoiding the bottom does not automatically mean moving toward the top, and that tension Between pride and patience, between tradition and transformation, is exactly where this team finds itself. Right now, trying to define what the future is supposed to look like while still being pulled by everything it has always been. What complicates this entire discussion is accountability. Because accountability in a franchise like Pittsburgh has always been interpreted differently than in most places. Here, accountability is not measured by draft position or future flexibility, but by whether the team shows up prepared, competitive, and recognizable every week. That standard has been met far more often than not. Which is why the idea that the team has been left in ruins feels exaggerated to some, and painfully accurate to others, depending on what lens you choose to use. When you look closely at the roster, it is hard to argue that everything is broken. There are young players who have already shown they belong at this level, especially in the trenches, where the organization has quietly rebuilt stability after years of uncertainty. There are defensive pieces who project as long-term contributors, and there is enough talent to suggest that the foundation is not hollow. This is not a franchise starting from zero. It is a franchise searching for direction at the one position that defines everything else. The quarterback question overshadows every conversation because it touches every part of the team. It affects play calling, roster construction, confidence, and even how fans perceive progress. Without a long-term answer, every move feels reactive rather than intentional. You are not building towards something specific. You are simply trying to survive the present. That survival instinct has kept the Steelers relevant, but it has also kept them stuck in a loop of short-term thinking. There is also the psychological side of it, both for the organization and the fan base. Bringing in veteran quarterbacks, hoping one of them can recapture past success or simply manage the offense well enough, offers comfort. It feels responsible, it feels safe. But safety in the National Football League often means limiting your upside. You might avoid disaster, but you also avoid discovery. You never truly find out who you are or what you could be. The uncomfortable reality is that developing a quarterback almost always looks ugly before it looks promising. Mistakes are magnified. Losses pile up. Doubt creeps in from every direction, even when there is a plan. It rarely feels good in the moment. That is why so many teams abandon the process halfway through, convincing themselves that the experiment has failed before it has even had time to breathe. Patience is preached constantly in sports, but it is rarely practiced when the results hurt. In Pittsburgh, that challenge is even greater because losing is not part of the collective identity. Generations of fans have grown up expecting meaningful football every season. Even during down years, the team has found ways to hover around respectability. That history makes it difficult to sell a vision that involves short-term pain. No matter how logical it might appear on paper, the emotional investment is too deep, and the standards are too ingrained. What makes the current moment so fascinating is that it sits between eras. The familiar faces that define the last chapter are nearing the end of their time, while the next core is still forming. This is the window where decisions carry more weight than usual. The choices made now will not just affect the upcoming season, but the identity of the team for years to come. Playing it safe might preserve the illusion of competitiveness, but it risks prolonging uncertainty. There is also the danger of misreading closeness. Competitive games, narrow losses, and flashes of promise can convince a team that it is on the verge of something special when it is actually missing the most important piece. That false sense of proximity can be more damaging than a clear failure, because it delays decisive action. It encourages patchwork solutions instead of structural ones. None of this erases what has been built or dismisses the accomplishments of the past. It simply reframes the present. The Steelers are not broken, but they are unfinished. They are not in chaos, but they are unresolved. Until there is a clear commitment to identifying and developing a quarterback who can define the next era, every season will feel like a holding pattern. Competitive enough to matter, but incomplete enough to frustrate. As this new chapter begins to unfold, the pressure will not just be on wins and losses, but on intent. Fans will be watching closely, not just to see what happens on the field, but to understand what the organization is truly prioritizing. Is the goal to remain respectable at all costs? Or is it to finally accept the discomfort required to build something lasting at the most important position in the sport? Knowing that the path forward may test the patience of a fan base that has never been asked to wait for long. Another layer to this situation is how decisions made now will shape perception before they ever shape results. In the National Football League, narratives harden quickly. A young quarterback struggling early is labeled a mistake before he has time to grow, while a veteran placeholder is praised for stability even when the ceiling is clearly limited. The Steelers have lived inside that contradiction for several seasons, choosing comfort over curiosity and in doing so, delaying the moment when real answers are forced to the surface. There is also the matter of timing, which is something organizations often misjudge. The idea that you can wait for the perfect moment to develop a quarterback is mostly a myth. There is always a reason not to do it. The roster is not quite ready. The defense is too good to waste. The division is too competitive. The schedule is too tough, eventually. Those reasons stack up until years have passed and the question remains unanswered. At some point, the risk of waiting becomes greater than the risk of trying. What makes football uniquely unforgiving is how much everything revolves around one position. In other sports, a star can be offset by depth or system. In this league, the quarterback defines your margin for error. Without one you trust, every drive feels fragile, every lead feels temporary, and every season feels like it could unravel at any moment. That uncertainty leaks into every corner of the organization, from play design to roster planning to long-term vision. The Steelers have the infrastructure to support a young quarterback if they choose to truly commit. There is coaching stability, a culture that demands professionalism, and enough talent on both sides of the ball to prevent total collapse. What has been missing is not opportunity, but conviction, the willingness to live with mistakes in exchange for knowledge. The acceptance that short-term discomfort may be the price of long-term clarity. Fans often say they want honesty from their teams, but honesty can be difficult to hear. It means acknowledging that being competitive is not the same as contending, and that hovering in the middle is not a sustainable destination. It also means recognizing that the search for the next long-term quarterback is not a sign of failure, but a necessary step in the evolution of the franchise. As the next phase begins to take shape, the most important thing the Steelers can offer is direction, not promises, not quick fixes, but a clear sense of what they are trying to become. Whether that path is embraced immediately or questioned along the way, clarity has a way of settling debates over time. And in a league defined by uncertainty, knowing who you are and where you are going can matter just as much as the results on the scoreboard. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The Pittsburgh Steelers appear to be quietly plotting a seismic shift in their offensive line, and the whispers around the league suggest one name is at the center of it: Tevin Jenkins. Sources close to the team hint that the Steelers are exploring ways to bolster their pass protection, and Jenkins, known for his imposing frame and disciplined technique, could be the missing piece that transforms the unit into a nearly impenetrable wall. Jenkins has earned a reputation as one of the most physically dominant guards in the league, with an uncanny ability to mirror speed rushers while anchoring against power moves. Insiders suggest that his potential addition would not just be a boost for the offensive line, but a statement of intent from Pittsburgh. The team's quarterback could suddenly have more time in the pocket, opening the door for big plays and more aggressive offensive schemes. Rumors indicate that the Steelers' front office has been impressed with Jenkins' versatility, noting his capacity to shift seamlessly between guard and tackle if needed. This kind of flexibility could allow Pittsburgh to experiment with different line combinations, keeping defenses guessing and providing a rare strategic edge in the AFC. While nothing is officially confirmed, sources suggest the team sees Jenkins not merely as a player, but as a cornerstone around which the line could be rebuilt. League analysts have started speculating on the ripple effects this move could create. A stronger offensive line would likely elevate the running game, giving the Steelers' backs more room to maneuver and forcing opposing defenses to respect both the pass and the run. Some insiders even speculate that Jenkins' presence could have an immediate impact on the locker room, with his leadership and work ethic setting a new standard for the offensive line unit. Of course, questions remain. Would Jenkins adapt smoothly to the Steelers' system? Could his arrival shift other players' roles or even spark trade rumors? While the details are murky, the speculation alone has ignited excitement among fans. Pittsburgh's offensive line has long been a topic of scrutiny, and the idea that Jenkins might anchor it has become a tantalizing storyline. If the whispers are true, the Steelers could be on the verge of transforming one of their biggest weaknesses into a feared strength, and Tevin Jenkins might just be the linchpin of that transformation. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.